Good afternoon. Welcome to the U.S. Department of the Interior's Lunchtime Lecture Series. This is a monthly lecture series that we put on as part of the museum. We interpret the history of all of our bureaus and how they work together under the Department of the Interior. This month I am very happy to be welcoming Scott Foss. He is a BLM regional paleontologist here on detail in DC, so we were very lucky to catch him. He's very busy and finishing up his detail here this week, so he'll be back in Utah very shortly. For more than 20 years, Dr. Foss has worked as a paleontologist and as a museum curator for both the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management. His research and expertise in the paleobiology of basal ungulates, hoofed mammals, which are early pigs. He is an expert on paleontology and public policy and is accomplished in public speaking on paleontology. He's worked with various media outlets such as National Geographic, the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, and the BBC. And he's been working to popularize paleontology discoveries and advance our knowledge in the natural sciences. His recent work centers on developing policy in order to implement the Paleontological Resources Preservation Act of 2009 and promote professional ethics for subdisciplines within the field, museum and mitigation paleontology. So he comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience here with the Department of the Interior. Please welcome Dr. Foss.
Thank you, Diana. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you, Diana, for setting this up. This has been makes a real highlight. I have to make it worth coming all the way to Washington, to do things. This has definitely been a plus. Something we've been able to do here. So what we want to start talking about here is dinosaurs in the American West. That's what we all came to see. We came to hear about the story, and this is really a wonderful story. In 2010, BLM Utah announced 7 new dinosaurs, and at the time there were about 700 known dinosaurs ever in the last 150 years that were ever described. And so 7 dinosaurs would be 1% of every dinosaur ever described. Was not that I'm prone to hyperbole or anything, but 1% of all dinosaurs ever described found on BLM Utah in 2010. And you have to understand that a lot of things happened in BLM Utah in 2010. A lot of things happened all across our public lands, but we're talking about all sorts of things, everything from a new popular wildlands policy coming out. We're talking about new popular things like some major law enforcement activity that was going on in Utah. We're talking about wildly popular oil, gas drilling, new resource management plans. And the BLM is stuck right in the middle of all these. So to be able to have this real great punch at the end of the year, and guess what else we have? We have all these new dinosaurs, and it's something we're doing. And so that's really what I'm going to try and hopefully I'm preaching to the choir. I really hope I'm preaching to the choir here. But mostly the excitement that, some things we do are not only positive, but they are broadly popular. And you very rarely find people who say, gosh, not another dinosaur. In fact, the only person who says that is me now. So in order to understand what happened in Utah, here's my point. A couple of people said they had to leave early. Here's our new dinosaurs from Utah 2010. So that's the talk. So you're clear to go now. Okay, but let's back up to the very first paleontologists in the federal government. Would be Cope, Edward Drinker Cope, and Othniel Charles Marsh. They worked at the surveys of the territories, and there were 4 great surveys of the West. There were actually even more surveys than that, authorized by Congress to basically understand all of this land out west. Can we send people out to farm it? Do we have water out there? What about the tribes that are out there, the ethnology out there? And what about the fossils? What about the paleontology? And these were the paleontologists who wrote up the work that came out of there. And since they were on the government payroll, I'm going to, again, not being so prone to hyperbole, they're our first paleontologists working for the federal government. In 1877, out in Como Bluff, Wyoming, they really started finding some bones. And this is where things really start rolling. And the other thing that's important about Como Bluff is just the volume of new dinosaurs that were coming out of there. And this is a time when dinosaurs are new. They're still trying to get their hands around Darwin's new theory and where that fits in, and now there's all this new stuff coming out of the American West. The interest in Europe was just fantastic, was huge, and in fact, this image right here is of the Diplodocus. It's actually a cast of the Diplodocus that came out at Como Bluff at the British Museum. Just became the rage in Europe. All these new dinosaurs from the U.S. It was a big deal. A lot of neat, interesting things happening. And so while they're at, I've been to Como Bluff. I can tell you about it without the pictures. Anyway, so Marsh is working out at Como Bluff. They spent about 20 years out there digging all sorts of fossils. And Cope, his rival, if you've heard about the Bone Wars, well, Marsh and Cope had certain issues out there. Cope happens to be working at Como Bluff also, because the American West is not that large. So the 7-mile ridge, also Allosaurus, which you've heard about, and we've kind of adopted it as the BLM dinosaur. It's first found in Wyoming. Big Al, the Allosaurus, was dug out of Wyoming about 15 years ago. Very, very famous specimen. And of course, the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry in Utah is also very well known for all of the dinosaurs that have been found there. So Cope found Allosaurus out there. Marsh found Diplodocus. And this is where the feuds really got going. Before that, there'd been a few insults between the two. They didn't like each other. It was mostly hubris and a little bit of ego going on there. But now things got nasty. This is where things really got going. And there were allegations of stealing from each other's quarries, stealing each other's workers, and that one actually did happen, we know. And also allegations of destroying fossils when they left so someone else wouldn't come and find them. Today, as the person who permits out in that area, we'd revoke your permit for that kind of behavior. But that's the kind of thing that was going on. And there's even a very well-known story of where a quarry was allegedly dynamited so that nobody else would ever find it again. And it's debated about 100 years later now if that really happened. But the idea was to keep the others from getting it. The point here is 1877 was the year there were 6 or 7 new dinosaurs a year, and 1877 was the biggest year in dinosaur discoveries. So that's the gauntlet that's been laid before us. As I said, these two guys, they didn't get along so well. When they've been talking about some of the greatest feuds in history, and there's a book out recently about 5 years ago, talks about great scientific feuds. And going through that book on the greatest scientific feuds in the last 100 years, or in the last couple of hundred years, the Bone Wars was number 1 on that feud. But 4 of the 10 had to do with paleontology. Another one had to do with anthropology, and another one had to do with evolution. But it's like, wow, we think paleontology is all good news, warm, fuzzy new dinosaur, but boy, when things go bad, it goes really bad. And that's what I'll show you here. So what happened in 1890, scientists waged bitter warfare. Like the Kilkenny cats, the squabble much longer continues. There won't be much left of either combatant. And wow, here's the newspaper. And luckily, newspapers don't do that today, where they kind of fan the flames a little bit. So then they immediately go to Marsh and they say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And if he had simply just kept his mouth shut, this would have, by January 13th, the Bone Wars would have been over. Unfortunately, he came back with counter allegations, and then this went on and escalated and escalated. Well, remember I said that Cope and Marsh were working as federal paleontologists. They caused a lot of trouble for their respective agencies. Some were working with Department of War at the time, where some of the funding had come from, but mostly Department of Interior, specifically John Wesley Powell. John Wesley Powell was the head of the U.S. Geological Survey. John Wesley Powell, through his administration, had funded most of the work that Marsh was doing. This had, what would you say, political ramifications. This had huge blowback on Powell. Powell almost lost his job over this, and not because Congress was very annoyed with the dinosaurs, but this made him look very bad. He lost some of his power, and in 1892, the U.S. Geological Survey had its budget cut by 40%, and that's big. We're complaining about a 3% rescission, and this is a 40% cut. And immediately, one of the things called out in the bill that year, in the appropriations bill, no more paleontology. We're done with this. And so that's what we have to live with. 2 years later, Powell is out. Antiquities Act of 1906 comes along. Paleontology is not mentioned in it. We have since 1906 used the Antiquities Act to justify permits, mostly in paleontology. It's the only real authority we could hang our hat on, and some solicitors are saying sure that paleontology is an antiquity, and others have said nah, not so much. Finally, one federal judge said nah, not so much. No paleontology in the Antiquities Act of 1906. There's a small tie between what happened with the Bone Wars and the Antiquities Act that I'll try and just briefly show you. But essentially, paleontology missed the boat, and that was it. We're voted off the island. We're no longer part of the thing. From 1892 until 2009, federal government did not have a clear mandate to manage and protect paleontological resources. We could try and use the Antiquities Act. Paleontology shows up in a number of other smaller laws, but as far as having a really broad mandate, Bureau of Land Management had FLPMA, Federal Land Policy Management Act. The National Park Service had their own Organic Act. That was, and it still is, pretty powerful for Park Service. But no clear mandate on paleontology, specifically calling out paleontology. Well, we go back to Charles Doolittle Walcott. Now, this was a paleontologist, an invertebrate paleontologist, very well known. He was a member of the National Academy of Sciences. I think today the highest award in the National Academy of Sciences is the Walcott Medal. This guy was connected. He understood what was going on. He worked with the U.S. Geological Survey since its inception in 1879, all the way up until 1892 or 1894 when he became its director. And he was the director of the U.S. Geological Survey all the way until 1907, which included when the Antiquities Act came out. Walcott did one thing very important, and that was that he was able to, well, first of all, he's really well known for his discoveries of fossils on public lands out west, Lagerstadt. This is talking about the origin of the modern phyla of life on planet Earth happening in the Middle Cambrian, 500 million years ago. And there's these deposits of soft-bodied organisms. We're talking worms. We're talking sponges. These are things that if you stepped on a worm on your way into this building, it's already shriveled up and gone. And yet we have some that are 500 million years old preserved in the rocks. And that was what he discovered, understood the importance, and was able to really push that as being extremely important. It's not a sexy new dinosaur in Europe that everyone's looking at. This is a worm that he found, or a sponge. But scientifically, what it is telling us is so important that he said this has to be part of the mandate for the U.S. Geological Survey. And he was able to sneak paleontology back into the mission of the Geological Survey. He's very well known for his discoveries in the British Columbia, but this is still part of that, what we call Lagerstadt, or Lagerstadt. And it's just fun to say the word. It just means lots and lots of cool stuff, soft-bodied forms, all sorts of neat things. But he was able to get paleontology back into the U.S. Geological Survey as a mandate, not paleontology for the sake of paleontology, but paleontology because of its scientific importance in understanding the geological record of the American West, which was the mandate of the U.S. Geological Survey. The Geological Survey continued to work on paleontology and started sneaking vertebrates into their work for the next 100 years. So the Geological Survey has, and the researchers within it have always recognized the importance of paleontology. They've not been crusaders for policy in paleontology, but they have continued the work. They have continued to understand the importance of the science of paleontology. In 1915, as we move forward here, Dinosaur National Monument becomes a monument. Apatosaurus, here at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, the Quarry Exhibit Center just reopened a Dinosaur National Monument almost about a year ago. And very important step in understanding the importance of paleontology on public lands and making it available to the public and teaching that to the public. And everything that we're trying to accomplish in the paleontology program now is part of the mission of Dinosaur National Monument, the first one to actually start doing that. So extremely important to the story. Follow that in the BLM in 1968. BLM's very first visitor center is the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry. And Quarry Visitor Center, and then it was rededicated in 2007. In 1984, another important thing happens is that now, via secretarial order, before that, Antiquities Acts were all administered by the National Park Service. And now, the various agencies can administer their own resources, in this case, antiquities, and in this case, included paleontology. An important step in paleontology becoming an actual program and not an afterthought or just, hey, what do we do with this skull we just found? Isn't that cool? 1992, the Bureau of Land Management introduces regional paleontologists, the first professional paleontologists in the Bureau of Land Management, and there's a lot of land there. So even just having, in 1992, it started with just 4 paleontologists, then a national lead, 5 paleontologists. And now BLM, you know, we're bulging at the seam. We've gone from 5 to 7. So, you know, and we also pose for album covers. So, but at least for BLM, an extremely important step in the evolution of paleontology as a program. 1992, important things happening that affect the program. The confiscation of Sioux. There's been other law enforcement activities, very important. This was probably the most visible one. How many people here were familiar with the Sioux case or aware of it? Anyone know where Sioux is now? The Field Museum in Chicago, $8.2 million at Sotheby's auction. So that affected our program too. Now, Sioux didn't come off of public land. I'll be clear about that. But it affected the way we manage it. It was a very high-profile case, and it sucked in every federal paleontologist. And how many federal paleontologists were there at the time? Remember, we have 5 in the BLM. We have about as many in the Park Service, about 10 in the Park Service, but they're unit paleontologists. It sucked in everybody, and it really. It was just an important step in everything. It affected the career of everybody involved, as cases like this do. 1993, a year later, Badlands National Park starts public interpretive programs of its paleontological resources. Now the public comes to the park. They've already seen the dinosaur wall. I mean, many of us went as homage to see that wall. But now we can go see an active dig going on out in the field. It's something that's integrated into the park program. It's something people see happening. It's not just an afterthought or not just an exhibit, but actually living, breathing, happening. The dinosaur wall is the quarry at Dinosaur National Monument. So it's in the visitor center there, hundreds of dinosaur bones all out in one area. And then, lucky for us, the geology has pushed it up at an angle about, it's almost, I think it's about a 70-degree angle. So you couldn't have a better viewing wall for that. And many, many large, long-necked dinosaurs in the quarry face in the visitor center there. Pig Dig, Badlands National Park. Fun name. People wanted to see it. How many people here went to, saw, or know of the Pig Dig in Badlands National Park when that was going? It's just closed recently, but it was open for 15 years. 1994, another very important event. For the 102 years after the first time they hit a major cut, this time they lose 500 people. U.S. Geological Survey took a major hit, lost its paleontology program, lost most of its paleontologists, really took USGS out as being a player in the management of paleontology. Extremely important in the long timeline of things. We have the pistol-packing paleontologists, the law enforcement activities going on. Now there's an integration where law enforcement is saying, how can we help you? And what more needs to be done? Now there's a real program beginning to develop here. In 2000, the report for the Secretary of the Interior on managing fossil resources. What should be done? A number of recommendations were brought up. Now it's getting some high-level attention. This report was requested by Congress and submitted by the Secretary of the Interior. Most of the paleontologists working in the federal government had something to do with this, either commenting or actually authoring this report. It was a very, very important time and very critical, because following this, things really start to move. And we start seeing high-level public outreach and education occurring in national parks, BLM especially, and U.S. Forest Service. And going high-tech, everything from web blogs to getting onto the news shows, really pushing the program. Not just, isn't it neat there's a new dinosaur, but here's what we're doing, why we're doing it, who's involved with it, all the things that are going on with it. In 2005, paleo consulting is becoming the hot button in paleontology. Most of the new jobs in paleontology are in consulting. Part of this, Energy Policy Act of 2005. Let's get moving out there. Let's open up the West. Now it's for oil wells. It's for energy corridors. It's renewable energy is the big buzzword today. It's always going to be something. But now paleontology is part of that discussion, an extremely important development in paleontology. And in 2007, Utah wakes up and starts. Dinosaurs have been coming out of Utah for more than 100 years, but now all of a sudden we're saying, hey, maybe we should tell people about what we're doing. You know, we keep hearing about our issues in the wilderness, or our issues in energy corridors, or our issues in wild horse and burrow. But let's start telling them what we're doing in paleontology. And we start seeing a lot of new sexy dinosaurs that none of us saw when we were kids, except for maybe one person here. Most of us, these aren't the dinosaurs we saw when we were kids. These are not familiar to us. These are new dinosaurs that are coming out. It's fun, it's exciting, it's neat things going on, it's putting a positive light on the agencies of what's happening, what's being discovered, and it's also forcing us to work more and more with our partners, because us federal paleontologists, I'm wearing a tie. I mean, come on, I'm not finding these dinosaurs, I'm not doing that. But we have 120 permits out in Utah right now, and this is people going out doing that work. In 2009, it finally happens. The Paleontological Resources Preservation Act is signed into law. Number 1, if you don't remember anything else today, the Secretary shall manage and protect paleontological resources on federal land using scientific principles and expertise. And this law was drafted, 10 years, I wouldn't say 10 years, 8 years before it actually became law. It was reintroduced over and over in congressional sessions. And then the new administration comes in and has a big emphasis on scientific principles and expertise. And here's a law that already had the right buzzword in the right place at the right time. It's really been fantastic. Now our job is to explain what that means to people. What does it mean using scientific principles and expertise? What is scientific decision making? It sounds good. It sounds great. But how do you do that?
How is that act funded?
How is the act funded? The act did not have funding with the act. However, funding is authorized. So in other words, we can ask for funding for it. But because it's not a compliance act, it's not calling for new work to be done. It's in fact essentially telling the Park Service that what you're already doing, change a few words here and there. Now you're authorized to permit under this act rather than under the Antiquities Act or others. But it essentially didn't authorize a new line of funding.
So to do this additional work now for this act, the people had to take a piece of their existing budget and put it towards this new work.
Well, there's not actually new work. Under the law, what's said is, under existing laws, say NEPA, says you need to consider the effects on this resource. What this does is makes it unambiguously clear that paleontology is one of those scientifically important resources that must be considered in what you're already doing. In other words, you already have a mandate to look at paleontology, and this makes it clear that paleontology is one of them. It's not really a new mandate, like, oh, now you have to do this or now you have to do that. We were already permitting in paleontology. This authorizes us to permit in paleontology. So it essentially authorizes a lot of the policy that we were already doing under more vague authorizations. That's the best answer I can say. But it brings paleontological resources to the forefront. It shows what we have. Now we have a real program. And paleontology is an actual program in the federal government. You know, the next step, you know, we'll start calling paleontologists paleontologists, you know. And maybe have a little bit less of the collateral duty. There's a huge amount of workload out there, and it's almost all done as collateral duty, as we know in virtually every other profession within the government. But having a few more technical experts out there is going to help. But we're really seeing a paleontological renaissance, and it's not just the new law. It's not just Jurassic Park. There's a lot of things going on. We're discovering a lot more. It's not just mitigating a new pipeline, but while you're checking that pipeline, you're discovering something new. I mean, there's a new interest. Maybe Jurassic Park did foster some of that interest of, wow, not just, oh, another dinosaur, but, ooh, cool, another dinosaur. Do you think there's dino DNA in there? What can we do with that? Start thinking about there's more that can happen, and that's the real revolution. Is in the last 10 or 15 years, is the science has really taken off, and it's no longer just, isn't it neat to have a new dinosaur? But now we can say, yes, but we can do carbon isotopic analysis or rare earth elemental analysis and have geochemists and various other people involved in the process and start asking some really, really interesting questions. So we look at paleontological management by agency. We're looking in the green here. We're looking at the area of land. It's a pretty crude transformation between these, but it's relative. Notice the number of permits that the Bureau of Land Management issues versus the other agencies. Proportionally, Park Service has quite a few permits. Park Service is all research permits. BLM is about a quarter to a third are consulting permits, doing consulting paleontology. But there's a huge amount of research going on there as well. And then you look at the number of actual paleontologists in the programs, not very many. And what I define as a paleontologist is someone who has paleontology as a job duty at least 51% of their title. I have to draw the line somewhere. So back to 2010. The new dinosaurs, and these are just the new dinosaurs from Utah. There's also a new dinosaur from Dinosaur National Monument, so in fairness, I should have added that. But that was 8 new dinosaurs in 1 year from public lands in Utah. One of them named after a BLM employee, Scott Richardson. So, BLM's really getting involved. It's not just handing out the permits. It's not just making sure everyone dots the I's and crosses the T's. But some of us, and when I say us, I use the term loosely, some BLM employees are actually getting in the field, working with these researchers, interacting with them, and some really neat things are being found. One of the dinosaurs found in 2010 is an interesting story. At one of the permit terms and conditions is that when you publish on your new discoveries, you credit the agency. Seems like a reasonable thing. We spent time and money permitting this person, tracking what they're doing and keeping track of the resources that they bring in, the museum aspect, everything else. Getting some credit for this has been one of the biggest pushes we've been doing in the last 7 years, is trying to get acknowledgement out of our researchers. Because otherwise it's Dr. So-and-so discovered another dinosaur. And where did you discover it? Well, out west somewhere. Well, out west somewhere is America's public lands. So it's time to get credit. So this paper for Gemini Raptor, I got a preview of the paper about a week before it actually came out in the streets. No acknowledgement to the BLM. What are you going to do? Well, I could pull their permit. By golly, that's what we'll do. We'll take their permit away. No, that's not what we do with our partners. We love our partners. So what we did, though, is we kind of said, well, let's be part of the press release here. And the press release came out. It was a joint press release between the the Utah Geological Survey and the Bureau of Land Management Utah State Office. And we pushed that. And in the press release, we say it's found on BLM lands. Bureau of Land Management. Get our name in there. Let's get our talking points out there. Let's make this part of the story. And we made this story not just, oh, ho hum, another new dinosaur, which you normally do after 7 or 8 dinosaurs in 1 year, or at least I do. So we talked about, well, why is it Gemini raptor? Well, it's named after these pair of twins, these twins, great researchers, and they were actually on site. They're the ones who discovered the location of this dinosaur, and it was named after them. It's an interesting story. It's a fun story. Each one of them has a fantastic story of their graduate work and all the work they've done in paleontology. We tell that story as part of the press release, and next thing you know, it's everywhere. Also, if you note the date, the 21st, what happens in the federal government on the 21st of December? Quick answer, nothing. Everyone's going home. This was the cover of the Department of Interior webpage for the next week while everybody went home. It's like a coup. It's not wild horses did this or someone's angry about that. It's look what we did. Isn't this neat? And then it's stuck on the webpage for the next week. And that's when people are surfing the pages and gosh darn, I'm so upset with the BLM, and then they come and find this. Hey, isn't that neat? So it was a real coup for our program. I think it was good press for the Department of Interior. It was good for everybody, and the story was a very positive story. And we took lemons, made lemonade, and our researchers are now acknowledging us in their papers. So it worked. 2011, another sauropod. In 2011, another troodontid, a very interesting, kind of related to the velociraptors, thought to be a super smart dinosaur, Talosampsoni. Oh, I don't know if you recognize. Anyone recognize the person who that was named after? Sampsoni? Anyone watch Dinosaur Train? That's the other Dr. Scott. We actually used to live less than a block from each other, and so it's been going on for years about which one is the other Dr. Scott. So today I win. Teratophonius, a tyrannosaurid from Utah. And so we're looking at dinosaurs from Utah, and we're clicking out a couple each year. And then all of a sudden in 2010, we have this major spike of dinosaurs. And now, one thing about dinosaurs is it takes about a year to 10 years before you get to hear about it. Because it has to go to the laboratory, get cleaned, prepared, studied, written up, and then the journal takes another year to actually publish it. It takes a long time to get the information out there. So when you get a bunch here, they were actually discovered over the number of years. But what that also means is I'm going to give you a preview of what's coming up. Because we've got a lot sitting in the laboratory, cleaned, ready, written up, and in some cases they've already come up with tentative names for them. I can't tell you the tentative names because they don't tell me, and I wouldn't tell me either. If you know the Code of Zoological Nomenclature, like we all read that every day, the Code of New Zoological Nomenclature says the first time it's used in press, that is the name of the animal. It's very important to use that name correctly in the scientific paper when you put it out there. And so it's kind of a game not to tell people what you're naming the dinosaur. And that's why a lot of people get animals named after them, especially fossils, because no one knows the name until the press release comes out. And I'll show you one here coming up. It's kind of interesting. Anyone know what dinosaur was just described this week from BLM Utah? No one did the research ahead of time? I just found it yesterday. I've been out of Utah. But I'll show it to you. So here's what we have coming, another dromaeosaur. This is something related to the velociraptors, a little bit smaller than Utah raptor. We have another sauropod coming out of the Moab area. A big long-necked dinosaur. No one's seen this one yet. Actually, it's kind of hard to hide this one. Brigham Young University is assembling this one right now. It's kind of hard to hide a big dinosaur like this, but no, we still don't know the name yet. A new coelophysid. This one's really exciting. This is out of Triassic rocks, much older rocks than you normally find dinosaurs in Utah. And this is similar to coelophysis, which I don't know what to compare it to. Is those little hyper guys from Jurassic Park that, I don't know if you remember the movie. These are new, they're larger, there's lots of them. This is going to be a neat one. A new ankylosaur. A lot of ankylosaurs from Utah. Yawn, another ankylosaur, armored dinosaurs. Another horned dinosaur. How many horned dinosaurs have we described? With 3 of them in the last few years. I mean, I grew up with Triceratops, Styracosaurus. Triceratops and Styracosaurus. We have 3 new ones in just the last few years. There's one more in the laboratory ready to be described. Parasaurophilus. This is just one of the coolest ones. And since we're doing well on time, I want to tell you a story about Parasaurophilus. My son is 4, and this is his favorite dinosaur. And about a year ago, he's 3 years old. He has me drawing pictures of dinosaurs in chalk on the driveway. And did I tell you how much I hate dinosaurs? I did my dissertation on mammals, not dinosaurs, but my son, he wants pictures of dinosaurs. He always wants me to draw this one. A friend came over to look at it with his daughter, and he says, "Oh, Leo, looks like you have a dinosaur on the driveway." His little 3-year-old. No, it's Parasaurophilus. I just love it. Hypsilophodont, new one coming from Grand Staircase Escalante. Most of these are coming out of Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. You talk about the Kapirowitz Plateau having one of the largest reserves of coal in the world. It's also got the world's largest reserve of undescribed dinosaurs. A new Pachycephalosaurid. Again, what a cool animal, And if the animal isn't cool enough, you have the name. Parasaurophilus and Pachycephalosaurus. Don't you love just rattling off those names? I think that's why kids like dinosaurs, just because these names are so, compelling. And of course, it's almost disappointing when you break it down to the Latin, where it's just pachy means thick, cephalo means head, and saurid means means reptile. Thick-headed reptile. Oh, a little anticlimactic, but Pachycephalosaurus. Anyway, another one, Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. Another Hadrosaur. Big, I was going to say grazing, not so many grasses at the time. They're mostly browsers, I guess. But big plant eaters, very, very large. And yet another Tyrannosaurid. So we're looking at 2 new Tyrannosaurs out of Grand Staircase Escalante, living at similar times but different animals. It makes you wonder what's going on with these animals. Just a few million years apart from each other. A lot going on. I mean, boy, Grand Staircase must have been a real place to live a while back. And we're just talking about dinosaurs here, but it's not just the dinosaurs. It's also, the super croc. If you remember the super croc from Grand Staircase Escalante, we're talking about a 35-foot-long crocodile. The dinosaur-eating crocodile. So earlier this year, Yurgovitya, a new dinosaur, named for the Ute word for coyote, a very small dinosaur. And one thing about Yurgovitya, this is found near Arches National Park. Okay, quiz for you. When you're talking about land, what land is near Arches National Park? And I'll give you a hint. That's the land north, south, east, and west of Arches National Park. That's called Bureau of Land Management land. So yeah, this was the same researcher who pulled that with us on Gemini Raptor. However, just this week, where is it here? Saturday, September 15th, Martha Raptor. Talk about keeping a name secret. This is one of the names I knew about. Martha Hayden has been working for the Utah Geological Survey for over 20 years. She has worked on everything. She doesn't work too much in the field anymore, but she just has done everything else for that agency. And right here, right early on in the release, collected under permit from the Bureau of Land Management. See, we did it. Excellent press release. Everything is great about it, except for the part where I read about it in the paper with everyone else. I like to know a little bit sooner, but we're happy. Yes?
So it was named after her, but she's not the Ph.D. that did the papers.
That is correct.
So why in these articles is that researcher with the Ph.D. not mentioned?
In taxonomic nomenclature, it is considered poor form to name a new species after yourself.
I didn't mean it like that.
Oh.
I meant in the press release.
Oh, in the press release. Yes. It actually does come up. It interviews both the person who described it and the person who discovered it and all of that. It does come out in the press release. who that is.
I would totally name it after myself. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But it's very common for them to name it after colleagues and everything else. There's a big interview with both the person who discovered it and the person who wrote it up, who are two people. They're actually co-authors on the paper. So, and I just want to make that point again. It's not just dinosaurs that's going on. I mean, we like to talk about dinosaurs, and what's neat about our program, unlike some other programs, is that we have dinosaurs. We have a dinosaur. But really our program is Paleontological Resources, and dinosaurs are a very small part of the program. It's not why we do what we do. It's not so we can go discover cool dinosaurs. If that's all it was, it would just be a mineral claim. Oh, I found a dinosaur, I'm going to put it up. No, dinosaurs tell us their science. They tell us about the past. They tell us about the present. They tell us so much. But so do other fossils. So I just want to make the point, it's not just dinosaurs. When we were talking about the invertebrates in western Utah, this Lagerstätten, the Cambrian explosion, there's only 3 places on Earth where you see 3-dimensional preservation of soft part, worms, sponges, things like that. In the Burgess Shale of British Columbia, where that's a United Nations World Heritage Site and provincial park. Yunnan Province, the Xinjiang fauna, Class A National Geological Park in China, and also applying for World Heritage status. This is major stuff. We have our work cut out for us in the West Desert of Utah, where we have the same thing, only ours is, we have our local protections, but there's no real major thing calling out protection on it. This is where we need a law. This is where we need help. This is where we need to be putting our attention, is how we're going to manage this as an agency. What are we going to do about these World Heritage class discoveries that are on public lands? And finally, I was at a lecture at Sir David Attenborough in 2009 in Bristol, and one comment he made at the end of his talk, which I almost fell out of my chair, because he starts talking about the fossils of the Utah West Desert. I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? And if you know Sir David Attenborough, my favorite thing about him is that he's the one person more prone to hyperbole than me. Everything he says is the largest in the world, the biggest on the planet. I thoroughly enjoy that. Anyway, he says, if I could go back to one point in time, it would be to the Middle Cambrian during the emergence of nearly all of the modern phyla of life. It's like he's pointing it out right there, and we should be listening to him. We should, okay, if this is what you think is important, maybe we should look into it. And we are. Very important. And finally, moving up to 2012, where we are, our departmental rules are still not published from the PRPA, but hey, we're only 3.5 years out. Or into it. So, sometimes rules can take 8 years to get out. But this is what we're working on now. This is the next big thing, is to get the rules from the law published so that we can go on with agency policy and then get out and do the dirty work, which in our case is the good work. The fun stuff is actually getting in the field, doing something with those West Desert trilobites, doing something with all those dinosaurs on the Kapirotz Plateau. We need to get our policy in place, and before we can get the policy in place, we need to get the rules published. And what's the future? Federal paleontology? Well, as I said, federal paleontology isn't just putting a new dinosaur on display. It's not just the headhunting of finding a cool dinosaur. What we're talking about is the history of ecosystem diversity and climate change on planet Earth. We hear about climate change. We hear about ecosystem diversity, evolution. Paleontology, that's what paleontology does. That's what it's informing us about. It's telling us about the bigger question. And so I'll just conclude with one thought, which is, if you want to look into the distant future, you need to understand the deep past, the science. So that concludes what I want to tell you. I just want to make one more point, and that is that Lucy Curzon, our national paleontologist, 2012, has been working tirelessly the last 4 years to get, prior to that, to understand what's going to happen when this new paleo law passes, and after that, what are we going to do now that this new paleo law has passed? Lucy is retiring after 34 years. She has 6 more weeks on the job, and it's right here. So anyway, thank you very much.